Hello, and welcome to our third podcast with grandmother Mulara and Sue, and of course, my co host, Chris Clifford. I think we don't need any introductions today. If you're watching this for the first time, then check into our first and second podcasts where we have longer introductions on who everybody is. But welcome, everyone, and I'll hand over to Chris to tell us our today's topic.
Thank you, Becky, and welcome, Grandmother Mulara and Sue, and welcome and hello to all of our listeners too. So, Becky and I have been talking about 0 point energy and balance and spiritual hygiene. And these are going to be a part of our November monthly spiritual topics here at CC. And we thought that today we could start our podcast with a discussion on these topics. I've been doing research on 0 point energy, and there's a lot of information out there from a scientific perspective and the quantum physics around it. But of course, what we want to talk about is the spiritual aspects of this energy and this space today. So it feels like, in its simplest terms, 0 point is that inner stillness. I've seen it called a space of nothingness, which I don't really like that description personally, but I've seen it as pure potential. And my favorite is the field of infinite possibilities. And so, Grandmother Mulara and Sue, we would love for you to weigh in on your knowledge of the space. What is it? How do we experience it? And maybe why do we want to? So whoever would like to begin.
Well, I refer to what I think you're referring to, what I would call the sacred neutral, that we look for the sacred neutral, the position of neutrality, in that we're not attaching ourselves or attaching our emotion or getting triggered or attaching a response to what someone else might say or to whatever's happening around us. If we can find the sacred neutral within, it's about actually, the field of possibilities is like, well, all things are possible. But you find the sacred neutral within yourself, you are not swayed energetically, spiritually, by what somebody else is saying or doing.
I love that. I think that's absolutely beautiful. And sacred neutrality is something that is a term I would adopt. I do love that. Thank you.
I think when I got the little note, I'm like, 0 point, I don't really think about 0 point, but the field of infinite possibilities, it's like, yes, because I agree with Grandmother Mulara, everything is possible. And moving into that space is an allowing. It's when we're allowing ourselves to be given more than we would have tried to make happen. Like, we're so used to trying to push the river, or we get a goal or an idea or whatever, and we're trying to make it happen. And yet, if we will find the sacred neutral, or that allowing place, I could call it grace as well, because that's how I experience it, where we are given so much help and so much assistance in moving forward on our path. Because the truth is, as we've said before, the universe is beneficent. It's totally benevolent and wants to support us as we reach our full potential. And so getting out of the way from an ego point of view is a really important part of that, because then more can happen. And I love it, because in my life, I've seen different times when what I would have asked for is so much smaller than what I was actually given. And so once I had a really good spiritual friend who was like, okay, what are you going to manifest? It was right after my spiritual awakening. She's like, what are you going to manifest? It's like, I'm not taking my little pea brain and try to come up with something I'm going to manifest when I've always been given way more than I've ever asked for. So neutral. I like that.
Thank you, Sue and Grandmother Mulara. So what tips do you have for those who are listening? How does one get into this space?
be grounded is one thing. Many people aren't. I'm finding that's a commonality across all the people I'm seeing these days, is to help them to be grounded. Really connect to Mother Earth, be grounded. If you're not connected to Mother Earth, you are subject to the winds. The winds that blow can take you this way or they can take you that way. Ground yourself. That's my tip.
We were discussing that, was it just yesterday, Chris? And I was likening it to being a cork bobbed on the surface of an ocean when it's very windy. If you're not grounded, then you can't access the still inner calm, and you get swayed around by all the, the current, the energy, the tumultuous forces that can leave you bewildered and exhausted. So, yeah.
It's been interesting. Sometimes I work with people of different nationalities, and I go back when I'm doing ancestral clearing, go back to the original state. And what I have found in almost, well, I can't think of any that weren't really, really grounded and connected to the earth, to each other, to creation. It was our natural state, and it's what's been majorly interrupted in many ways. When I had my 7 years down in Tasmania, and I would go out in the bush and meditate, I could see how nature was whole, like there was a web of interconnectivity, and nothing had to be brought in and nothing had to be hauled out. It was fully, everything provided whatever everything else needed. And as humans, we have separated from that web of interconnection. And I think it's hurt us a lot. And I think as we move through this current transition, like this quantum leap, it is so critical for us to reconnect to that web, so that we're working, well, we could say co-creatively with nature and with the earth, but reconnecting to the earth, to each other, to creation.
Thank you. I agree with that completely. And as you know, I spend a lot of time sitting under this beautiful oak tree, and it is very, very grounding and energizing. It's like my favorite place in the whole world. So you touched on meditation, and I would love to go there with you and Grandmother Mulara. In our last podcast with Tiana, we talked about meditation, and it was interesting because Tiana, Becky, and I all weighed in on our perspective of meditation and what meditation is to us. And a lot of people think to get into the space, meditation is the way, I'll say it's the way. And a lot of people have very specific ideas about what meditation is and what it isn't. And I'll just share, throughout the years, I've become like very flexible in my thinking about meditation. So I would love to hear from both of you. What is meditation to you? How do you do it? And what does it mean? Are there other ways that people can get into the space? Grandmother Mulara talked about grounding. Sue, you talked about being in nature. What are the things that people can do? And so whichever one of you would like to start with that.
I think meditation helps one to connect to themselves on who they are on the inside, and connecting to the earth, connecting to your divine self. But that the connection is within you. And if we're talking about neutrality, it's about finding that's what you call the 0 point, that place, that point of peace, the inner peace within you. And that inner peace sometimes needs a deliberate effort, like a meditation, to bring you in and to ground you and to just be in this neutral spot where you're not actually thinking of anything or doing anything or responding to anything. A quiet, sacred space where you can connect to your sacred light within, the breath of light the breath of love, the breath of living within you. And that is why I call it the sacred neutral, because there's a sacredness in that connection. And it's almost like if you connect into that point within you, you actually can connect to all outside of you. And you realize that you're all one. But that might be too far-fetched at this point in time. But it's just trying to, find that peace, that sweet spot within yourself.
Thank you. That's not far out. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. It's like, yeah, that's the spot. It's interesting because many people, like sometimes I think the idea, like how people think of meditation can almost be a distraction from being in that central spot, because it's like, oh, I can't think anything. Oh, I have to do it this way. Oh, I have to do, the how do you creates rules, and we are great at using rules to keep us from sinking down into ourselves. I have never been good at meditating. I have used it several times in my life, and it was a critical point as I was growing spiritually. But what I eventually discovered was when I sink into that quiet spot, it's a spot of allowing and being receptive. And so it gets to be quite a conversation going on, not in words, but receiving information, guidance, love, appreciation, like receiving from the divine, but it's within me. It's hard to say. I'm not one to transcend. I think I'm going to get into during the evolution of humanity, transcending was a key part of our evolution, where we rose above what was going on in humanity. But I've always say it's like old paradigm, that transcending or going to enlightenment. Whereas I believe, you can look at Jesus, you can look at different figures. It's like we're meant to be in here fully and transmute to see the world as it is, and transmute what's not working and take us to a higher level. Like we're responsible in a way. We're involved in the healing of ourselves and this planet. And I don't think that's transcendent. I think that's like we're down in here transmuting. And that's why I don't meditate in the way that I always have thought of meditation. And it's like, so there's my limited belief of what meditation is, and go into meditation in a different way. That's a real quieting, and then an opening and being receptive. I just want to say it because some people, you go into that zero place where you don't have an attachment, you don't have something you're trying to push or work out or whatever. Then when thoughts come to you, there's a whole communication, like there's a receptiveness and a communication. And I spent decades, I have to admit it, because I spent decades when I would go to that zero place and the thoughts would start coming in. I was like, oh, I have to throw away my thoughts. And I was totally not useful to the universe, because in that place, what would come to me was stuff that was useful or actions I should take. And I kept negating them all because it's like, oh no, those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts. Mm-hmm. And maybe that'll be helpful with somebody, because we're all in different places along this process. So try it. Try one kind of meditation. If that doesn't work for you, try a different kind. Chris, you zoomed right by it, but I think you should talk about what you do out under that tree, because I think that's important.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for all of that. And I don't really know how to describe what I do under the tree. I used to, like you, I used to meditate in a more formal way, and I actually learned, and I'm a meditation instructor, in a beautiful form of meditation where you get a mantra. That's the sound that the universe made at the time that you were born, and it's really beautiful. And on occasion I'll like slip into a little piece of that, but that was more like you sit down, like you said, you try to release your thoughts, and it worked for me for a long time. So I think over time we change, we evolve, and what works for us then evolves, and we're all different, and what works for one of us is different. But now I sit under a tree and I kind of ground, and I connect with the tree, and I connect with nature, and it's just I get into the space for me. And there are times where I have thoughts. It's kind of like what you said, Sue, but then a lot of times the thoughts that I get, they're inspired thoughts. It's Becky and I are working on a monthly spiritual topic, and a thought comes to me. I'm like, oh, I gotta, I get out my phone and write it down. So, and then I go back into the space. So it is, I feel like for me, after, like I said, the meditation that I did probably for a decade worked really, really well for me. And then over time, I didn't think about it. I didn't think, okay, I should do something different. It just kind of changed. I realized, okay, I'm sitting outside, like I'm getting connected. This is awesome. Oh, I'm getting ideas, and they're inspired ideas. So yeah, it just kind of changed.
How about you, Becky?
Well, I also went through, I did a formal way of meditation where it was connected with a kind of yoga, and, sitting in front of a candle with a flame and just watching the flame, and that's supposed to make you zone out and calm your thoughts. And to some extent that worked. And also through breathing. So you'd like cover up one nostril and then breathe in and then breathe out and so on, and then cover up another nostril. And it's sort of the pattern of the regulation of breathing that gets you into a meditative state. So I did try that. But again, also like Chris, I love going out in nature and being able just to sit down, maybe on the coast. Last weekend, Simon and I went away for a couple of days, and I just sat by the sea and watched the waves coming in, and that gorgeous repetitiveness of the waves coming in on the shingly beach just really, really put me in a sort of a deep calm. And then you become one with it, and then you see the vastness of it, and I just loved that. And right now, when you were talking, you probably noticed my dog Freya jumped into my lap, and she just came in for a cuddle and was really calm, and both of us sort of went, oh. So that's why I went very quiet, because I just connected with that inner calm. And I was also thinking on an everyday basis, when people have their bath or their shower, bath time's a lovely time, especially if you think I'm going to have a nice relaxing bath, and you make time for yourself and then just sort of sink into it and relax. That's a time when you can really let all the thoughts of the day, go away. And you can, I think for many people, that's one time when people have their sort of space and they can go into their own sense of peace and grace, 0 points. So I'm just thinking of everyday practical ways that people could start doing it in a way that doesn't seem like formal meditation.
It's interesting because listening to you, I'm sorry, I'm hearing, it's almost like in the beginning, you almost need something that will make you go to that place. And I do remember I used meditation to make me go there. And then once I started finding that place, then it wasn't as necessary. In fact, almost got in the way. So it depends on where somebody is on their path. But I'll be honest, even going and I'm sitting on the toilet, in a moment, like it's a quiet moment where I'm just, and I will have inspired thought there so often, it's embarrassing. Any place where you just allow that space. Grandmother Mulara, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, in the beginning of your day, before you open your eyes, get into a practice of being calm. So as you're waking up, but you haven't yet opened your eyes, allow the breath of life to come in consciously, just noticing how your body feels, noticing because the brainwave state, you're coming out of a brainwave state that's been relaxing and really peaceful. Notice what that feels like. And if you actually do that practice regularly, you get really good at it. You get really good at that piece of peace, the PEICE of PEACE, where the grandmother's having a joke. So that, where you can get actually connected to the sacred neutral. You haven't moved. You're just waking up, and rather than rushing to get up, taking a moment to be at peace in that resting state before you open your eyes. That is a sacred neutral, the 0 point. That actually sets you up really well for the day. Then you can start to think about, okay, what have I got on today? Sometimes I have to think, what day is it? I've forgotten. So it's sort of because I go so deeply in, I go, no, now where am I and what's happening today? So anyway, that's for those that don't have to have an alarm clock and jump out of bed and do it and run at 100 miles an hour. It's almost like a standing start. You've got to go, vroom, and that's not going to help you find your 0 point.
No, and nor does waking up and then picking up your phone and thinking what's going on my phone, what's going on in the world out there. You got to make that space before you connect with everything else, through the electronics. And so I'm really noticing that we're talking about connecting with our inner space in terms of finding stillness and calmness in the moment, and also then leading to inspiration. But how can we use this really practically in terms of coping with stressful situations? Like if we're faced with something that's urgent, stressful, maybe requiring big decisions, or something that stresses us out, how can we use that skill to stay calm in the moment so that we can carry on and make good decisions rather than ones of panic and fear?
Can I just go first and say, the first things first, remember to breathe, because when that happens, you hold your breath. So first things first, remember to breathe. But that's my start. Who's next?
I totally agree. In fact, I was going to say, take a deep breath. I have been in fights in relationships and stopping and just taking a breath and giving up my attachment to how things come out. Like just I'm allowing something else, and I open my eyes and the whole thing is different. Like the person felt the energy shift and the fight is gone. That's possible almost anywhere, but you can only discover it when you use it. Like it's a perfect time to allow in that 0 point energy, that grace, that field of infinite possibilities. Help me to receive help. Just help helps, because when you ask for help, you can get help. Whereas lots of times, if you don't ask, you can't be given things because they're not allowed to interfere too much. One of my favorites was, let me be wrong about this because I'm in a situation that's so uncomfortable. Let me be wrong about this, because if I'm right, I'm in this crappy situation. Whereas if my idea about some part of this isn't right, well, then there's a way for me to move through it easier or more gently. I often will ask, please help me to sort this out. And then I allow, and I can't tell you how many times amazing things have happened that I wouldn't have thought up because I called on grace, infinite possibilities, the sacred neutral, and the support that's there is staggering. It's surprising and staggering, and I'm awestruck all the time. And we're so used to, and I'm just talking as humanity, we're so used to relying on ourselves because that deep interconnection hasn't been firmly established. But when we start relying on ourselves on a bigger scale, like on a deeper scale, which is a bigger scale, Wow.
Can I come back in and say that I'm also sensing that I can almost feel people watching this, and there's some people saying or feeling, oh, but, you know, it's all right for us to say it when we're in a calm place. But I actually think there are people who, you know, when you get a shock to your system, when you have a shock to your energy body, it's very difficult to, first of all, you do have to breathe, because it's that shock that I was referring to. And the shock can come when it just comes out of the blue, is a phrase we'd use, or it was not expected, and there could be a shock. You still need to be able to breathe. You still need to ground. Your feet are on the ground. Put your feet on the ground. And the other, and it'll come, you will recover, but it's the shock factor. And so what I want to go here is one bit that helps, and the four of us have talked about this before, but not online, so here we are. We've talked about spiritual hygiene in the background. Now, if you have been practicing your spiritual hygiene, and we'll get into the details of that in a moment, then you'll actually find that the shock factor on your energy body, your spiritual body, is less of an effect. It's really important that you practice hygiene of your energy bodies. We have several energy bodies, but there are some simple practical solutions. So I just want to go forward. We'll come back to what they are, but go forward and say, if that shock has happened to you, one way to work with it is, what we would do is sometimes we roll you in the dirt. You know, if I've got somebody who's had a shock, I might snap out of it like so, but I also would grab them when we roll them in the dirt. And what that does is it changes their energy body. It changes the effect on their energy body. Or we might actually put them through the smoke of the fire, is another way. That's actually a really good cleanse of your auric field, your etheric field. The smoke actually helps to just clear away that which is not meant to be in your field. It helps clean it up. You smell great afterwards, but anyway, it's especially if you're using gum leaves, they're our favorite. But it's sort of a way to cleanse your whole energy body pretty instantaneously, that will actually help you to recover from a shock and then find that neutral place again.
Is that like saging? You know, a lot of people use sage to clear their energy field. Do you find that works the same as the smoke?
I suppose, yeah. I was thinking Aboriginal, so just what would we do out in the bush if something happened like that? So yeah.
So different cultures will find ways of doing the same thing. So yes, in one culture, maybe it's Native American, I'm not sure where they do the saging. It's like smudging with burning sage sticks, and that's lovely. And you know, I've done that many times, and I love the benefits of that. But yes, if you're just out in the bush and there's no sage, smoke of any kind, you know, as long as it's sort of safely contained. But it's the same technique, isn't it? It's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, it's almost like your spirit can leave you, like it's like if you've had a really a terrible shock, and to bring it back, we work with that, with the smoke.
There's definitely, I mean, when people do receive a shock, their spirit can become sort of disconnected or disjointed. I remember there's been times in my life when I kept bumping into things and sort of bruising the same part of me, because my soul, my spirit was misaligned. It was sort of a bit up and out of my body, rather than being fully in place and grounded in my body. And I know that happens to other people as well. So a shock can do that. It can sort of slightly disconnect you, and you need to bring it back in. And you know, you can do that yourself. You don't have to necessarily go to a healer or someone else. So how can we, I'm just thinking on that subject, how can we, if we feel disconnected and unaligned, how can we bring ourselves back in and align all of our bodies, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual?
I come back to grounding again. You can lie on the ground. Do you know, lie front ways on the ground. Put your belly button on the ground. That's a really good way to come back in. And your belly button, your etheric umbilical cord, you can plug in your etheric umbilical cord into Mother Earth. Actually feel that connection and ground, and it'll have a tremendous benefit to you. So that's what I would do. You could be in a house, you can be upstairs, it's the intention of doing that. And another one would be to, I'm thinking instantaneously, so that when we say, well, how can this help you? I'm thinking in an instant, what is it that you could do? Another one is I'm just feeling into it, to clap your hands and rub them to get your the chakras in your palms going, and you can sweep yourself. Imagine your hands are like rakes, and you can just sweep or scoop. Okay, you can just sweep yourself, your etheric field. Another thing you can do, if you have time to prepare a little bit, is to have some salt in water. So you could have just a bowl of water with some salt in it. It could be at the front door, it could be in your bedroom, it could be under your altar, it could be by your desk. That actually helps to transmute, which is a word that was used earlier today, to transmute negative energy in an area. So if you've had a shock, there's something you've created, something in the atmosphere, but having a bowl of salty water can help grab it. It will grab it. It goes naturally to that place. Salt is fantastic for a spiritual cleansing.
I'll add one more for instantaneous grounding, is backing up to something hard like a door or a wall, hanging over so your head is hanging down, gets you out of your mind, and push on your heels into the ground. And it causes you to come back down fully into your body. And it works. I've used it that way. So
it's interesting because that's a natural reaction for someone if they have had a big shock. A lot of people do sort of double over, don't they? And I'm thinking it's very important to actually be mindful that you need to look after yourself when you do have a shock or an upset or very strong emotions, and recognize that can cause an imbalance within you, and to help heal yourself before things get worse and worse, you need to sort of have the intention to look after yourself, to heal yourself, to be gentle with yourself and nurture with yourself. And Grandmother Mulara, you were talking about the salt water, and I was literally thinking about having a salt bath, or bath with some bicarbonate of soda in as well. That's really lovely. And baths are very healing in that way, because it's almost like a cocoon. It's a bit like, it's the closest we get really to going back to the womb, to just having your safe, sacred space. And there you can have the moment, the time to think, I've had a shock, whether it's physical injury or emotional or mental or whatever it is, and I just want to tune into myself, check in, where am I feeling it? How can I bring it back into alignment? How can I look after myself? And breathing, relaxation, just knowing that you are consciously realigning your body so that you are back in connection, that you can cope with the next hurdle, rather than thinking, because if you are ungrounded, your sort of energy sort of fly away like this, and you become sort of frazzled, and you lose the ability to think clearly and so on. So I love all of these ideas. And it reminds me as well, I don't know if anyone else had them here in England. We used to have the Mr. Men books by Roger Hargreaves, and my parents used to read them to me. And there was like Mr. Tickle or Mr. Happy or Mr. Grumpy or Mr. Greedy. And one of them, I can't remember which one it was, but it was he used to panic a lot. And in one of them, I think it's Mr. Jelly, and he was told to count to 10 very fast, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then you can make it, calm down. And I really like that, because that was it's the same thing, isn't it? It's just taking a moment, count to 10, and focus on your breath, and
That's
then
good.
you think more clearly.
Yeah,
And
I
Becky,
like that. I wanted to mention, we've been talking about when you experience a big shock, which we've all had, I'm sure, at one point or another. But I did want to mention, like, all of these things work for ongoing stress too, which is something that I think in today's world, a lot of people just live in ongoing stress. And sometimes we don't even notice it. Like when I worked in the corporate world for the first part of my career, like I didn't really notice it. It just became my life. And, I worked from early till late and, didn't have time for much of anything else. And to me, that was just my life until, kind of a big shock that helped me realize, some different things in different ways. But I wanted to go back to Grandmother Mulara. You said something about practicing spiritual hygiene on a regular basis is helpful. And I just wanted to point out, like, it's helpful for day-to-day living too, not just, it's not, these aren't just things to do when you experience a shock.
I
No,
was
but
going
you
to say
can-
the exact same. Oh,
Yeah.
I was going
I
to
was
say
just
the
saying, you
same.
can withstand the effect of it. Yeah. Yeah, go on, Sue.
Well, I was going to say the exact same thing, because Becky was talking about taking care of yourself and nurturing yourself, which is absolutely important, but do it ahead of time so that you're prepared and have the resilience. Grandmother Mulara was talking about it as spiritual hygiene. Yes, because that prepares you to ride through the ups and downs of life. But it isn't oh, it's bad right now, what do I do? It's like, how do I take care of myself? How do I value myself and care for myself on an ongoing basis? So
Absolutely, because then we can take care of ourselves, and as you say, be in the still of the moment and able to manage things when they become stressful in a more more manageable way. So are there any other forms of spiritual hygiene? So Grandmother Mulara, you were talking about smoking, as in, smudging or going through smoke. You're talking about salt water and grounding and breathing. Are there any other spiritual?
You talked about a bath. So two things there. First up, as an alchemist told me about this, and it really works. If you put like a tablespoon of salt, and it could be Epsom salts or your bicarbonate, in the water, and a tablespoon of ground coffee. I don't know what the alchemist is, but those out there will know what I'm talking about. It works. What that does is actually really cleanses your etheric field, so that your spiritual body is back in, and and it's also helpful if you've expanded a lot. Spiritually expanded, and you want to come back into your body and trying to bring yourself back. It's a really good form of doing that. And the other thing I want to say is I regularly shower rather than a bath, and so every day in the shower I have some salt, and I rub it on my chakras, front and back, and I also rub it on the back of my neck, because if there's any entities that are coming in, nefarious ones, that they come in through the neck, the back of your neck. So have get into practice using salt, and I do that. I've showered, washed myself, and then I finish with the salt rub, and then wash that off.
are the coffee grounds used or not used?
Not used.
Okay.
And another one is hands. Like if you're working with energy and working with your hands, it's a good idea to have a something that keeps your hands clean when you're doing any energy work for yourself, or on someone else, on your animals. It's important to keep yourself energetically clean. And finally, we talked about attachments. So the 0 point or the sacred neutral is also about cutting our attachments to where we are draining our energy. So having a good spiritual practice is one that starts with a hygiene. And the hygiene is, not being connected to where we're draining our energy. Bring all of you back. And there was one other bit I was going to say, but I might remember when someone else is talking.
Well, I was
Thanks.
just thinking as well as avoiding alcohol, because especially at a time of distress or shock, that's often something that people will, reach for, but that actually can compound the issue very significantly. It doesn't, it clouds the mind, it takes away clarity, and it also, too much of it allows or facilitates entities to come in, because if you're in shock, fear, and all these negative vibrations, then entities get attracted to that and will try to come in. And Grandmother Mulara, you were talking about them coming in through the back of the neck. I'm also aware that they can sort of, they like joints, that they can tap on the shoulder or elbow or hips or the knees. They can enter through, especially through the joint areas. That's my understanding of it.
Interesting, because I've noticed a lot working with people that this goes into past lives, but if you've injured yourself in one life, there's a weakness in that part of the matrix. And usually often that's joints, but that matrix, when you come back in, it's still weak, and that things come in those places. I love that we're talking about things that hitchhike with us. Human beings are amazingly susceptible to having things, energies, entities join us. And it's not just entities, it's energies as well. And we have these references like the exorcism and all of this. And it's like, that's not really what we're talking about. It's more, it's not allowed, so they're nefarious in that way, but it's not like really scary, grotesque, bad, demony kinds of things necessarily. I'm not saying that can't happen, but I think it's so important because in many cultures, and we have a worldwide audience right now, some cultures are really aware of this possibility. When I was in Bali, the taxi driver told me, when we get sick, we go to the doctor and we go to the spirit doctor because we know there's some sort of energy involved as well. And I notice, like when you clear out what's not supposed to be there, that's not you and not in alignment with you, then often physical issues go away. It's kind of shocking, but it's true. And when you asked about how do you set things up to begin with, the spiritual hygiene, we'll do it under that. Every morning, I just affirm I am aligned with my divine self. And it doesn't matter if you've gone through my alignment process or not. It's like I am aligned with my divine self. When I go into a meditation, when I go to the chiropractor, when I go see anybody, no matter how much I trust them, I only want what's in alignment with my divine self, because I've noticed in clients, like they'll go into a meditation that they've always gone to, beautiful person, gorgeous meditations, and one time something will slip in. And so when you have that intention, it sort of closes that door. Becky, what you were saying about the alcohol, it would be the same for any kind of addictive behavior. When you're not willing to be present in your own life, so you're negating or numbing, you're opening the door. You're saying, I don't want to be in my life, I want to be, and so it opens the door, like and we just don't want to do that. It's one of the things I have shared with a lot of people, and they keep writing me how much it's helpful. Like some days you're just traveling along and you suddenly feel angry, sad, upset, grumpy, whatever. You don't feel like you're quite yourself. I stop and go, hey, if this isn't mine, out you go. Like, if this isn't mine, you can call on Archangel Michael, you can call on whoever you are connected to. But it's like lots of times I just kind of go, boom, like out. And just that, like we're sovereign beings. We have the right and the power to kick out what's not supposed to be in here. The problem is we don't realize these things happen. We just assume, because nobody talks about it. Whereas in other cultures, they do talk about it. Grandmother Mulara, what's it like? Do the Aboriginals have an awareness of things?
Sure. We see them.
Yeah, I don't see them, thank goodness. I just have to deal with them.
Some of us can see them, some of us don't. And it's an unfortunate thing that a lot of our people have resorted to spirit, to imbibe in spirit rather than stay connected to spirit. It's been a very difficult time for the intergenerational trauma that our people have experienced. So I won't go down that track in this conversation, but yes, we can see, we get a really strong sense of something. You walk along and you go, whoa, something's just happened there, or I shouldn't go there. So there's an imprint from the land that we sense from the environment, but we also can see sometimes the ancestors that are there. We know they're there, and that's why we say spirit. We generally don't use the word soul. We believe, so it's back the front to others. So we say we're a soul print. In this incarnation is our soul print. It's our miwi. Our miwi is our soul print, and that because we can see the spirits. So we know that we're a spirit traveling, and but we're a soul in this incarnation. So not to confuse people, I use the two terms together. I just say spirit, soul, because some people have been brought up believing that we're a soul traveling and we're in a spirit in this body, and I just know we can see spirits in the land. We see the old people sometimes. We see our own ancestors. And I think I've gone off the track of whatever the question was. Sorry, forgotten.
And how do you deal with when you're aware that somebody's carrying something that doesn't belong there?
So our traditional healing is a nunkari healing. We take that out of you. So we could do that any number of ways. There's particularly a healing modality in the Central Desert. That's where it's sort of more practiced, but it means that it's usually hands-on, and we could take that out of you. Actually, at these days, there's a few hospitals in the cities, some of the cities, Adelaide and Sydney, who've got nunkari healers coming in for their Aboriginal people that are there, for the First Nations people, patients, and the nunkaris come and work with them because that's their spirit doctor, if you like. But we'll do things. I got one time, I'll just give you one example with one nunkari. She took something out of a man and she just went, up against him and sucked it in and then put it in an empty bottle, put the lid on the bottle, and then gave me the bottle and said, can you take that next time you go swimming and release it underwater? There you go. That's just one example. But so there's lots of different ways that they are really incredible healers, our nunkari people. And so the nunkaris are the traditional healing modality. Yeah.
We definitely need to get back into that way of healing, because we need to recognize that we are more than just the physical body, and that physical ailments are usually as a result of they're sort of the last result, the last way of, what's the word? Presenting an illness. It's already gone through our mental body, our emotional body, before it reaches the physical body. And talking of these beings, I'm clairvoyant and clairsentient as well, and I've been able to see what we call jinn as dark sort of, they're like shadows but 3D and take up a 3D space within a room. So it's like a smoke shadow. And there's 2 times when I've seen them very clearly, both when Simon and I have gone to conferences. One was a conference about reptilians, and we were in a room full of people listening to different speakers, and I was suddenly aware of what looked like a whole load of bats flying around the room, and it had a very high ceiling, sort of domed up. And these had obviously come off the people, come out from people, and were just flying around together. And they were smoke, not smoke, but they were like black shadows, but
Like
taking
a shadow.
within a room. So it's not like against a wall. And they were all flying around and flapping around. And I saw them, and a couple of other people saw them as well. I wasn't bothered. I mean, I had my iron on me and so on, and I'm not concerned about that sort of thing. I don't have fear about them, but it was fascinating to watch. And another time,
You said you had your iron on you.
iron, yes.
Do you want to tell people about that?
Well, old-fashioned iron that's been forged. It's not steel, but iron can help repel these energies out of a body. But they have to be done in a certain way, and I'm not an expert on that. The other time I just wanted to say was, after being at a talk, when Simon was talking, and we went into a room with some other people, and someone came up to him and they wanted to talk about the entity that was in them. And I saw this entity as he was approaching us. The entity literally shot out of his body and ran. It took the form of like a cross between a rat and a fox, like a very small fox, ratty shape, and shot across the floor as a 3D smoke thing and just away. And it made me laugh because the guy was approaching, and then he started talking about it. And I said, well, I've just seen it. He's just run away. So, I can see these things. They do exist, and they will hitchhike, but often it's an agreement, especially with those beings, that can go on for several lifetimes. And you need to say, I don't want to have this agreement. You don't serve my highest purpose. I don't need my connection with you, because they're never really there. They're never there to help. They might say that they are, but they never are. And they're never in your highest, for your highest good.
So thank you for sharing those stories, Becky.
If you're going to change the subject, are you changing the subject?
Well, I wanted to just talk about, get some additional ideas for our listeners about physical protection from this. So
can I say something first that's
yes.
related to what Becky, because I don't want to miss it, and okay. It's important. And I hope I don't forget, because one of it has to do with children. And I want people that have children, like a lot of times children have night terrors, and parents are like, no, there's nothing really, and it's like, I've told them, believe your child. They're not lying. There is something after them. I've worked with many after the fact where it goes into a major physical illness, so not to just poo-poo and say, no, you, or kids that won't go in their closet, or they don't want to go, that corner of the room, or they won't sleep alone. There's probably something, like houses and everything else. And oh, I know what I was going to say from what Becky said. I've had entities in somebody try to kick me, like, oh no, it's time for you to go now, because they knew what I did, and my friend didn't know what I did, and they're like trying to kick me out of her house because they knew, that I would get there. It's you're gonna, I don't know what I'm allowed to say or not, because be saying I'm in alignment will protect you from most things, or if this isn't mine, just take it away. But a lot of people write me because they can see, like, there was night terrors in a child, or they have adult children that are suicidal or have a real negative bend or whatever. And for whatever reason, I was shown how to just go offer some help to the negative without needing permission from the person, because I'm not talking to the person, I'm talking to the thing in them. And this is going to sound weird, and I don't know how it'll fit in with people's understanding, but I've been shown that a lot of what's stuck on the dark side happened accidentally. Like they got stuck over there, they don't know what to do, they're not allowed to enter. We're not allowed that, you're not me, you're not in alignment with me, you're not allowed to enter. But they've entered through agreements, like Becky said, often through lifetimes. So they feel like they're us. And sometimes they've entered with good intentions, like if a child's being tortured or whatever. And so it feels like a friend. But even those it's not allowed. It's not your body. It's not your spirit, your soul, whatever. You're not supposed to be there. So I've been shown a way to just offer them some help so that they can get back on the right side of life. And it's surprising how many will just go, what? Yeah. And they're out the door. One of the worst cases, the woman sat there. I mean, it was screaming at me, no, I won't go. And when I made the offer to the thing, it was like, whoa, yeah. And out the door. And the woman sat there stunned going, oh my God, do you know how many people have tried to get that out of me? I don't see them, which is good news, because then they, I just clear that stuff. And I do it. I'm sorry. I know I'm wrestling. You can cut this out if I'm not allowed to say it. But people email me and just give me the name and birth date. And I do it as a group. I don't even do it individually. So it takes me 5 minutes to do a group. And then people write me back and say, oh my God, my adult child suddenly is happy and life's coming forward. Oh, the child, the kid is not, afraid anymore. Like, it's easier and not as scary. But because it's not in our culture, we don't even deal with this stuff. I'm sure like in Bali, they know exactly how to, or down, they have your, I can't remember the name of your anunku.
Oh, the nunnery. We have, there are different beings, Sue. Becky mentioned the jinn. I've seen the jinn as well. You just, you just say, out you go. You don't have permission to be here. You command your sovereignty. There are other kinds of entities. So we share this planet with lots of other beings interdimensionally. And sometimes they cross wrong way into our dimension, and they're not supposed to be there. And so it's about sending them back home or sending them back to the planet that they're from. So there's different ones doing different things. And those that are kind of attracted to our light is because they don't have one. They're attracted to the light. But so there's another way to move that along too. But thank you, Sue, for that service. It's a great service.
Yeah. I do it. I started just because I love the kids and I don't want the kids to suffer and parents don't know what to do with it. And I don't charge anything. It's just send it to me and I'll write you back when I've done it so you can watch for the differences. It just seems like a good thing to offer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Switch to Chris, yeah.
So I mean, I'm very mindful that this kind of conversation can start making people spiral down into sort of fear and panic and, even despair. And I would urge people not to go down there with their emotions, because we are ultimately in control. We're in control of our own body, and that is what sovereignty is about. And the tools that we've talked about in the last 3 episodes of these podcasts, we can, with intention, positive intention, manage our own physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies so that we are clean and clear and in alignment. And we know to avoid things that are not good for us, and we know to do some practices that are good for us, that help ground us, but also what we call, well, some people call raising their vibration, but it's that, to me, means focusing on joy, focusing on things that make you joyful, focusing on learning to do positive, have positive intentions. That's all connected. It's staying positive. Would anyone else like to add to that? I'm very mindful as well. I've never had such busy dogs all around me.
They're not disturbing us. You're way more aware of them, just saying.
That's great. I keep turning the sound off, so that's good.
Becky, I think you're right. Being positive and recognizing that we have the right and the power to choose for ourselves, and then declaring that is everything. And that's one of the things that humans have forgotten. We don't even think of it. We just assume, we just go along with life the way it is. And it's like, no, I have the right and the power. You don't belong here. Out you go.
Chris?
Grandmother Mulara and I are both opening our mouths to talk at the same time here. I was just going to make the link, Becky, from what you talked about, doing things that bring you joy and raise your vibration, and tying that to all of the entities and the things that we were talking about. So not that you won't ever get them, but the higher your vibration is, that in and of itself is offer some protection. And then I also wanted to reiterate, Becky, you saying, as you talk about these things, it's natural to feel like, oh, do I have those? What's going on? But I think that everyone here has talked about many different physical protection practices, and some of them are as simple as saying, I command my sovereignty. You set an intention, you break the agreement. You can use different, Becky, you had mentioned, iron, there may be different crystals and things. Grandmother Mulara talked about the salt on the back of your neck. Sue talked about reaffirming your alignment with your divine self, and just take this that isn't from me. So there's a lot of very simple, quick ways that we've talked about. So I just wanted to bring that back again too.
Thank you, Chris. And I'll just jump in. Yeah, for many people use labradorite, which is a beautiful crystal. It sort of shines, flashes, greens and oranges and yellows. And that, because it's so beautifully reflective, but also can have a deep color, that is well known for reflecting back negative energies and intentions, usually back to the sender. There's creating your own golden bubble. And this is part of, creating your own protection energetically. Some people might connect with some, angels like Archangel Michael. I've done that and gone through that phase, and it's worked for me at times. But just creating your own golden bubble, and to do that, again, it involves sitting quietly, making sure that you're grounded, connected to Mother Earth, focusing on the breath, and then breathing in. And then when you breathe out, for me, I breathe out through the heart, and I sort of create this big golden bubble. It's like an egg all around myself. And then with each breath, I make it stronger and stronger. And you can do that. Anyone can do that. And imagine sort of just with a breath blowing out any negative energies and vibrations away from you, and then keeping that protective shell, so that it allows, like osmosis, it allows energies of the highest vibration and intentions for the highest good in, but doesn't allow negativity. And there's so many different techniques, and I would love it for people to share their own as well in the chats. So I'm hoping that this will start a conversation where people can share their own techniques, their favorite crystals, their favorite go-to techniques and patterns and routines for this.
Even what we were talking about with the 0 point energy and the field of infinite possibilities, the more you go to that sacred neutral, breathe that in, live in that is almost like being in a golden bubble. Like it's grace is really protective. It's just, you know, you'd have to practice, like get used to being in it and calling on it. And
absolutely, and knowing that our soul, our spirit, is part of the divine, and nothing is stronger than God, goddess, divine source, and that can protect you, you know, from anything, all negative entities. I mean, yes, we deal with challenges on a day-to-day basis. Yes, we're here to learn our lessons, but we can have that armor. We can have, let's say, that armor of God, or whatever religion or beliefs or spiritual beliefs we belong to. We have that connection with that spiritual strength, which can protect us and be with us on our journey through this life.
Cool. I think that brings us to a natural close for this one.
I think it does. I think it does. We've been going for just about an hour, so that's lovely. Does anyone have any last things they'd like to wrap it up? Something that has stood out from in today's podcast?
I think it's interesting that we've come back to the beginning. We've done a loop, and we've come back to the sacred neutral. And a lot of our challenges, you know, they say that the furthest part to travel is between our heart and our head. You know, it's just such a long distance because we get so caught up in our head. And, you know, people worry about meditating and think, oh, how do you get your mind to stop? Well, just do it and let the thoughts come and let them go. Don't try and control them. So back to the sacred neutral is to find that beautiful place within yourself where you're happy, joyful, comfortable, and at peace. And I wish you well.
I totally agree. And I sacred neutral is a great way to say it. I am willing to experience the sacred neutral. Say that every day. I'm willing to experience the sacred neutral. Help me to experience it, you know? And I wish you all well as well.
Thank you. So for me, I'm going to share something that Sue shared, and that's reaffirming your alignment with your divine self. So I share that because I do it every single day. It takes like 2 seconds. And for me, it feels very protective, and it's a great way to start the day because it keeps me in alignment.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much, all. I think for me, this podcast has been so overwhelmed with, for some reason, my dogs have been all around me, and maybe they enjoyed the conversation. Maybe they just wanted some cuddles and love. But yes, thank you all very much. And there's nothing like a cuddle from a pet.
That's a good way to stay in the sacred neutral.
Yes, it
Cuddling
is.
your pets.
It is. It is. It's lovely.
They're pretty much in the moment.
They really are. Yeah, they really are. I've just got Lottie on my lap now. So thank you all very, very much. It's been a very enlightening talk, and it's lovely to reconnect with you all after the 3-week break. So lots of love to you all. And
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoyed this podcast.